Pop superstar Michael Jackson stands accused of being a predatory serial paedophile. Radio stations across the world are now reluctant to play his music, yet his fans continue to defend him. Posters appeared on the side of buses. Barbara Streisand said the kids were thrilled to be at Neverland, while Diana Ross even tweeted that Jackson was a magnificent, incredible force and pleaded, "Stop, in the name of love." So I have to ask, do the singer's fans have a point? Michael Jackson's defenders argue that some of the shame stems from the societal taboo and not from the acts themselves. They're wrong, and I do not defend his actions in the slightest. Paedophilia is a crime, whether it's perpetrated by the king of pop in a magical ranch or a prep schoolmaster. But I would say this, however flawed he was as a man, they are right to point out he was or is still a great artist. And I see no shame in continuing to listen and admire his work.
I'm almost going to argue against myself because I always think that people could only be convicted if they've had a trial, and he's never actually been convicted of any of these charges. However, Rachel, I can never listen to his music in the same way again. I don't believe in censoring, I really don't. I'm not going to... And there are so many musicians, artists, authors down the years who've had very questionable pasts.
Can I pause that a tiny bit? You can never listen to it in the same way because it's, as it were, been toxified by the fact that you know what he did. But do you agree that his body of work stands as a body of work such as, you know, Wagner was an anti-Semite? No, can you listen to Wagner?
I can't do that. And for those viewers who are not up to speed, much of this focuses on a documentary which was called Leaving Neverland. And let's see something from that.
Hello, Wade. Today is your birthday, so congratulations. I love you. Goodbye.
There's no thoughts of this is wrong or anything like that.
He told me if they ever found out what we were doing, he and I would go to jail for the rest of our lives.
Secrets will eat you up. You feel so alone.
I want to be able to speak the truth as loud as I had to speak the lie for so long.
That's from Leaving Neverland. It starts, if the viewer didn't quite... Hello, Wade, and that refers to Wade Robson, who, with James Safechuck, is two men who've made these claims. All I would say before I yield is it seems extraordinary that a grown man would seek to take young boys and sleep with them in his... I find that really, really strange. But again, you'll point to musicians and authors, I'm sure you're right, and composers and all sorts of other people. That strikes me as strange. Also, he didn't pay... or his estate didn't pay off one young person, they didn't pay off two. There's a history of paying off boys and or their families. That, to me, means, in answer to your question, I don't want to censor it, but if I never hear another Michael Jackson song until the day I die, I won't be missing anything.
What do we think? Can we separate the art from the artist?
No, I can't either. And I blame myself partly for it because, you know, years ago, he was always photographed holding a boy's hand. He had children in all his videos. Why didn't we get it back then? Maybe it was because we thought he couldn't be so blatant and be abusing children in plain sight of the world. And also, there was part of me thought, well, you know, the parents wouldn't leave their kids with him if that's what was happening. But I think we all have to take a little bit of blame for this because, you know, because he wasn't pursued in the way he should have done. He should have been pursued. He paid off for some people, as you know. He did go to court over one case. But, you know, the world watched him do this in the same way we watched Jimmy Savile. The rumours were there. He's America's Jimmy Savile. And one of the comments from the kids, I think, was Wade Robson. He said, MJ was the kindest, most loving person I ever knew, but he was abusing me for 7 years. And you see what happened to these kids with that. It's tragic. And for someone like Barbara Streisand, who I adored, I mean, really, for her to say stuff like...
Actually, can I just tell everybody, in case they'd forgotten,
well, I was going to say one of the things,
what Barbara Streisand actually said. His sexual needs were his sexual needs, coming from whatever childhood he has or whatever DNA he has. You can say molested, but those children They were thrilled to be there. They both married and they both have children, so it didn't kill them. But she did later recant and said, to be clear, there is no situation or circumstance where it's OK for the innocence of children to be taken advantage of by anyone. I am profoundly sorry for any pain or misunderstanding I caused by not choosing my words more carefully about Michael Jackson. Afua, do you think Carol has a point in saying that, on one level, we all knew for decades that Michael Jackson was an abuser, but we all continued to listen to his songs, to download them? Spotify still records 22 million users a month are listening to Michael Jackson's tracks.
I find this a really difficult topic. Those comments from Barbara Streisand made me feel sick. You should never seek to justify child abuse, and I'm not ambivalent about that. I don't think... No. I'm not comfortable with any of these tweets saying, well, there's no evidence that these men are telling the truth. You know, people who are victims of historic sex abuse struggle to prove it through tangible evidence. They should always be taken seriously. So I feel that very strongly. I grew up with Michael Jackson. Some of my first words were Michael Jackson lyrics. As a 2-year-old, I was obsessed with him. My whole childhood was defined by Michael Jackson. He's the soundtrack to my childhood, and it's very, very painful for me to hear this about him. And, you know, I mean...
Is it?
When I saw him with children, I was a child and wanted to be in Neverland. You know, that was my dream, to be like those boys at the time. I was the same age as them. So it's really difficult for me, and I think, you know, the lawyer in me says he has not been convicted of an offence. We have a presumption of innocence for a reason. That's not dismissing or belittling the claims of the abusers, but I'm uncomfortable with this kind of summary judgment that he's cancelled when he's not being convicted. On the other hand...
But you're talking about your emotional reaction. Now
OK, so you and Nick agree that he hasn't been convicted.
It's very difficult.
Even though he's paid tens of millions of pounds to these children and to their families. Can I
just let you hear what Taj Jackson says about his uncle? That's his nephew.
Oh, OK.
I was, you know, in that environment. I was a kid as well, but, you know, it's hard for me to say a grown man, and, you know, my uncle was a child at heart, you know, but he didn't have a normal childhood. And everyone that knew him, you know, from Elizabeth Taylor to Whoopi Goldberg to Macaulay Culkin, the ones that he let in, they recognized that. And I think it's hard for me to say, because I know as a parent, you know, you look at it differently. You're like, there's no way that should happen, period. In terms of just childhood, he was looking for that companionship, and not in a sexual way, just in a friendship way.
Just before you come in, Karen, I think it's healthy to have this conversation, not just about him, but about other artists. I mean, look at Eric Gill. His sculpture is on the front of the BBC. We use his fonts on a daily basis. He was abusing his daughters while he made art about them. There are lots of people whose work we admire who are very problematic. I don't think that we should exonerate them. I don't think we should silence
it sounds like
the accusations. No, I'm not justifying. I haven't said anything to justify it, Carol. I haven't. I'm just saying, and I think this reflects what many people feel, especially those who grew up with him or are emotionally attached to his music, that it's a very difficult and painful conversation. That's what I'm saying.
People forget that in 2005 there was a huge trial, and which everyone expected him to actually go to jail, and he got off scot-free. And the prosecutors at that time were just completely surprised because they thought it was overwhelming. So he has never been convicted. There's no question about it.
You say got off scot-free. Of course, he might have been innocent, Karen, just to make that point.
In their view.
Yes, in their view.
Absolutely. He was not convicted. That's the reality.
Karen, do you think that radio should carry on to play Michael Jackson?
Here's the other thing. After he died, his record sales have been more than during his lifetime before. I mean, so he is continuing to be very popular.
I need to give you a stat on that, just to bear that out. £2.1 billion has been made since his death from his music, which is an incredible figure.
So what are the families saying? Michael was subjected to a thorough investigation, which included a surprise raid of Neverland and other properties, as well as a jury trial where Michael was found to be completely innocent. We can't just stand by while this public lynching goes on, and the vulture tweeters and others who never met Michael go after him. Michael's not here to defend himself, otherwise his allegations would not have been made. The Jackson family goes on. Michael Jackson was and always will be 100% innocent of these false allegations. Quickly round the table. You're running a radio station. Would you play the music or not?
Yes, I would, and I would say what the Jackson family should have said was, we believe he did bad things, but he still was our son and our brilliant artist, and that remains.
You chair a series of radio stations.
Yes,
Would you play
so
the music?
the reality is his music is going to carry on being played. I'm not a great fan of his music at all, but I'm going to have to listen to it because it's going to be played.
You're running radio stations. Would you continue to play his music?
Absolutely not, because I think we have to make clear that that kind of behaviour is not acceptable at all, ever.
That's crazy.
Pass.
Which means yes.
I struggle.
You won't go and see Caravaggio in the
made up my
National
mind yet.
Gallery because he was a murderer. You won't listen to Wagner because he was an anti-Semite. Where does this stop?
The music stops right now because you're watching The Pledge on Sky News, and coming up...
So good.
4 more years!